Right now, we're gonna watch this other visual venture video. This is the other one I had on the playlist. Disturbing video games inspired by true events. I just want to watch it to see if we've played any of these games, because we've played a lot of disturbing games, a lot of scary games. So I want to see if there's like Fears of Fathom or something.
Some video games are terrifying not because they're just horror games, but because they're based on real incidents. The characters, the locations, the situations all come from true stories. Today, we're diving into the darkest ones. These are disturbing video games inspired by true events. We'll begin with the bad cases and save the worst for last. So it's almost the end
I didn't
of the
see
year, guys,
them.
and
They
my
were
goal is
blurred.
still the same, to increase the number of videos I put out without sacrificing quality. And to do that, we got to keep growing. So it would mean the world if you subscribed.
I am
promise
subscribed
to do my very
Mr.
best to
Visual
make the
Venture.
best videos I possibly
Wait, what is
can.
his real name? What is Mr. Visual Venture's real name? He looks like a Tony.
Visual Venture and you are awesome.
Kind of looks like a Tony.
The devil in me. Most video games have a monster or a bad guy you must defeat. In most cases, that villain is pure fiction. But in 2022, a team of game developers wanted a villain who felt real. So they based him on one of the most evil people in American history, Henry Howard Holmes. Holmes lived in Chicago in the late 1800s. He owned a hotel in a busy part of the city, but he wasn't trying to run a normal business. Holmes ended the lives of the guests who stayed at his hotel. Simply put, people checked in, but many never checked out. Holmes designed the entire building to isolate victims, prevent escape, and end them with minimal witnesses. From the outside, the hotel looked ordinary.
The first floor was mostly storefront. Third story contained apartments that he rented out. But the second floor and basement is where Holmes put his chambers of terror.
This is a model of the second floor. Some rooms locked only from the outside. Others had moving walls and secret passageways.
There were rooms with no doors, rooms with many doors, blind passageways, and hinged walls.
Holmes even installed soundproofing so no one outside could hear the screams. If someone managed to escape a room, the hallways were designed to confuse them. In short, the hotel was one giant maze. Holmes carried out his crimes for years, but eventually he was caught. Holmes was arrested and put on trial. He confessed to ending 133 guests. The court sentenced him to be hanged. The story shocked the entire country. Newspapers nicknamed his hotel the Murder Castle. But as decades passed, the story faded. 100 years went by and people stopped talking about Holmes and his evil hotel. Then a video game brought him back into the spotlight. In 2022, a game called The Devil in Me was released.
Oh, it's a Dark
It was based on
Pictures one.
Holmes and his crimes. The game begins with a short film sequence. There's even a scene of Holmes on trial.
Oh, I've barely begun, Your Honor. You don't seem to understand. I was born with the devil in me.
But the story takes place
the
long
name of the
after
game.
Holmes is gone. A new criminal becomes obsessed with Holmes. He decides to copy his methods one victim at a time. So he builds a replica of Holmes' hotel and rigs it with traps. There are floors that drop people into spike rooms, hallways that shift like a maze. Some rooms are even designed to burn anyone who enters. When the hotel is finished, he wants to test it. So he invites a crew of filmmakers to spend time at his hotel. They think they're there to shoot a documentary, but once they step inside, the gate slams shut behind them. They're trapped in the hotel of horrors. This is where you take control. You play as the filmmakers. Your mission is simple: avoid the traps and get out alive. Survival comes down to choices. Choose well and the characters escape. Choose wrong and they don't. The developers later explained why they used Holmes as their choices. Choose well.
This is DVD. Is this not DVD? Oh my gosh, I don't think it is. I don't know.
And the characters
I've never played Dead by Daylight.
Choose wrong and they don't.
Is that
the
what it looks
developers
like?
later explained why they used Holmes as their inspiration. They believed that basing the villain on a real person made the horror more psychological, more intimate, and ultimately scarier.
I knew it.
Because The Devil in Me is one of the most disturbing games around. This next game takes you into the world of mad scientists. The Town of Light.
Don't know this one.
The Town of Light takes place in an abandoned psychiatric hospital. You play as Renee, a woman trying to remember her childhood. Decades earlier, Renee was a patient in the same hospital. She had mental issues and was admitted for treatment, but something happened inside the hospital that erased her memories. Now, as an adult, she wants to know what the hospital did to her. The game leads you through dark hallways. You find Renee's old belongings. You enter the rooms she once lived in. You read medical files that describe the treatments she received. Every item victim triggers a flashback that reveals something Renee experienced, but her memories are disturbing. She remembers strange tests and feeling scared. Then she remembers the lobotomy. A lobotomy was a surgery meant to treat mental illness by removing parts of the brain. It was really popular in the 1930s and 40s, but it was later banned because it caused serious side effects. The game suggests Renee went through this procedure, and that's probably why her memories vanished. It was a tragic story, but the idea didn't come from thin air. The game developers were inspired by a real-life place called Volterra. It was one of the worst psychiatric hospitals in Europe. In the 1960s, Volterra was a huge mental asylum in Italy. More than 6,000 patients lived there, but it didn't feel like a hospital. It operated more like a prison. Patients were treated like inmates. Nurses described themselves as guards or supervisors. Most patients were kept heavily sedated or isolated. If anyone resisted, the staff used harsh punishments, like electroshock treatments and ice tank submersions. Anything that forced patients to obey. If none of that worked, doctors performed lobotomies. After the procedure, many patients ended up with permanent damage, just like Renee in the game. Over time, Volterra gained a dark reputation. People called it the place of no return. Many patients never made it out. Eventually, the Italian government investigated the hospital, and in 1978, they shut it down because patients were treated so badly. After the closure, the building was abandoned, and people still explore the ruins today. Inside, you can still see graffiti left behind by patients. And thanks to the Town of Light game, more people understand what life was like inside those walls. Up next is a story that takes us all the way to Russia. Kolat was released in 2015. It's based on a real tragedy involving 9 Russian hikers. They went into the mountains, and what happened next made no sense at all. The mystery sparked countless conspiracy theories. Some even believed aliens attacked the hikers, but the hikers never confirmed what truly happened. They couldn't because none of them made it back alive. This is the real story. In 1959, 9 college students left for a winter hike in the Ural Mountains. They prepared for harsh weather. They were all experienced hikers. They were expected home in 3 weeks, but they didn't return. Their families finally sent out a search team. The only way to find the missing hikers was to follow the same path they took, so that's what rescuers did. Soon, they found a tent buried under the snow. Once they inspected it, the details didn't add up. The hikers' belongings were still inside. Their winter clothes were folded. Their boots and gear were all in there. That meant they walked out into freezing temperatures with almost no clothing. Something must have forced them out before they could suit up, and rescuers noticed something even stranger. Inside the tent was a plate of sliced food. It looked like the group was getting ready to have supper. Then something made them run. Rescuers also found that the tent was slashed open from the inside. All the clues pointed to one conclusion.
The group had cut their way out and fled their shelter in a panicked rush.
The question was why? The search continued. Not far from the camp, rescuers found the remains of 5 hikers. 2 were wearing only underwear. 4 hikers were still missing. Days passed with no sign of them. The search team eventually gave up. Months later, a local hunter found the last 4 hikers in a ravine. None survived, and they had unusual injuries.
The injuries had been sustained while they were all alive and could not have been inflicted by another person.
The story captured the world's attention. Newspapers summed it up like this: 9 hikers set up camp. Something terrified them. They cut open their tent and ran into the night. Then one by one, they lost their lives. Conspiracy theories exploded. Some said the hikers were victims of a secret government experiment. Others blamed aliens. Some suspected local tribes attacked them. More than 50 years later, this mystery inspired the creation of Kolat, and the developers used one conspiracy theory as the base of the game. In Kolat, you play as an explorer searching the Russian mountains. He's trying to solve a mystery. Months earlier, a group of hikers lost their lives in the area. Their story is identical to the real Russian hikers.
An abandoned encampment was found. The tent was torn down and covered with snow, with all the group's belongings left inside.
To win the game, you must find out what happened to them.
The truth behind this tragic course of events remains unexplained to this day. What really happened? Maybe the answer still waits to be discovered. Deep under the snow.
Most of the game is exploration. You move through forests, snowfields, and empty camps. Along the way, you find diaries and carvings on rocks. Each clue adds more information. At the end, you uncover the truth. Those mountains were the site of a secret government experiment. The experiment created dangerous monsters, and those monsters ended the hikers. The game was fascinating, especially because it was based on a real event. But many players didn't like the pacing. They complained that it was boring and called it a walking simulator. even with the criticism, Colat did something impactful. It brought attention back to the
Just a
real
walking
missing
sim, bro.
hikers. Sadly, we still don't know what truly
even that
happened to
scary.
them. This next game is based on a story you probably covered in history class. A Plague Tale: Innocence.
Oh,
This game was
I know this
inspired
one,
by
I know
one
this
of
one.
the deadliest events in human history, the Black Death. The Black Death was a pandemic that wiped out millions, and the way it began was shocking. It started in October 1347. 12 trading ships arrived in Sicily. Inspectors boarded the vessels to check the cargo, but they walked straight into a nightmare. Almost everyone on those ships had passed away. The few still alive were barely conscious. They were all infected with a disease no one had ever seen
the
before. They
plague.
probably caught it while traveling. And now those ships
this the one
carried
from
that same
the rats,
infection
or
into
is this the one
Italy.
from the poop?
Everyone in the port panicked.
the
They
same one?
ordered the ships
I
to
don't remember.
leave at once, but it was already too late. The inspectors who boarded the ships were infected. They carried the disease home and passed it to their families. Within weeks, it spread across the country.
The
No.
plague exploded all across Italy and quickly spread along trade routes across the entire Mediterranean and Europe.
And this wasn't just a regular infection. The mortality rate was about 60%.
Oopsie.
That meant for every 10 people who got sick, only 4 survived. More than
Insane.
8,000 villages were wiped out because everyone there passed away. But how did the plague spread so far, so fast? The answer was rats. In the
Yeah, it was the
1300s,
rats.
were everywhere, especially in crowded cities. The rats carried the infection from street to street and country to country. In just 5 years, the Black Death ended more than 25 million lives. That was 1/3 of Europe's population.
Holy
Centuries
shit.
later, that history inspired a team of developers. They created a game set in a world consumed by plague. That game was called A Plague Tale: Innocence. It follows 2 siblings, Amicia and Hugo. You play as Amicia. Your mission is to protect your brother Hugo and complete your objectives. As you progress, you discover that a deadly plague is spreading across the land. It sweeps through villages and ends lives.
The village is contaminated. That's why everyone's
So,
hiding.
yeah, I
The
remember
plague
the
in the
cover
game
of it.
is the Black Death.
The story focuses on a pair of young siblings who must escape the encroaching Inquisition and swarms of ravenous rodents in the course of one of the
don't think I've
worst
ever seen gameplay
historical
of it, though.
pandemics.
Just like the real pandemic, the infection is carried by rats. Thousands of them. The rats in the game are like a force of destruction. If they swarm you, it's game over. The only way to stop the rats is with light.
They run away from light and fire, so you need to use torches and fire and stuff in the environment to your advantage to clear paths of them when the ground is completely covered.
The game was a success. It was released in May 2019. By July 2020, it sold over 1 million copies.
Damn.
Gamers loved the adventure. Up next is a game of a tale we all remember learning about. Little Hope. Almost everyone has heard of the Salem witch trials.
Oh,
It
yeah,
was a
I do.
time when being called a witch could get you jailed. for
Witch.
Many innocent lives were ended during that period. Later, someone decided to turn that tragic story into a video game. The Salem witch trials took place in Massachusetts in 1692. That's more than 300 years ago. Back then, people were extremely superstitious. They believed everyday problems were caused by curses. They
Yeah.
suspected their neighbors were working with the devil. But the real trouble started when 2 girls accused 3 women of practicing witchcraft. The girls were lying, but the community was so
Yeah.
superstitious that they believed them instantly. People thought they finally caught a real witch. The 3 women were arrested and put on trial. The judges gave them 2 choices: confess and call yourself a witch, or deny it and face execution. The women confessed to stay alive, but the confession came with a requirement. The judges ordered them to name other witches, so the women pointed to others. Those people were arrested too, and the cycle continued.
And at the same time the trials were taking place, you still had more people accused of witchcraft. It had become really a wildfire.
Soon, the
it's
witch
so
panic
insane to think
spread
about.
to 39 nearby towns. More arrests led to more accusations. People were charged with making a covenant with the devil. More than 250 people were arrested. Some were thrown in jail. Others were given the ultimate punishment. None of it was based on real proof. It
This
was all
lady
fear,
over here,
rumors,
she's
and
my witch friend.
superstition. The Salem witch trials
We be
became one of the
doing
most
witch
infamous
stuff
events
together.
in history. Movies, books, and songs had been made about it. And eventually, a game studio turned it into a game. They called it Little Hope. Little Hope begins in modern times. 5 characters are riding a bus at night. The driver loses control and crashes the
remember
bus.
this
The
one?
group wakes up
Oh, it
inside
is this
the town
one.
of Little Hope. They realize the town is deserted, and the bus driver is gone. Their first goal is simple: stay alive long enough to escape the town. They try to walk out,
Oh,
but no
they're
matter
holding
which
hands.
direction they take, they end up back in the same spot.
I walked away from you! We're trapped here! There's no way out! I
Since they can't leave, they explore the town. They find old records about Little Hope's history. The documents describe witch trials that took place in Little Hope. Suspected witches were arrested and punished. The events are almost the same as the Salem witch trials. After the group finds this information, everything gets worse. Strange creatures start hunting them. These are the ghosts of those wrongfully accused as witches. Their spirits never found peace. Now they haunt the town. To win the game, you must protect the characters. Smart choices keep them alive. Bad ones can wipe out the whole group.
What's that?
Give me a hand here! Hold on. I'm coming back for you, John. Hold on.
Little
He's
Hope
not
was
coming
released
back for
in
John.
2020 and received positive reviews. It blended fear, mystery, and history into one unsettling story.
He's leaving
This next
John
game is based
Taz.
on a real family tragedy. Cursed Mountain. Cursed Mountain is a horror game released in 2009. In the game, you play as Eric Simmons. Eric has one goal: find his missing brother Frank and bring him home. Frank disappeared while climbing the Himalayan mountains.
Days ago, Frank set out to climb Chilla.
R.I.P. Frank. Unk game. What the hell? Is
He's still up there.
Eric climbs the same
Saying
mountain
it
to
'cause the
find out what
graphics
happened.
So, once again, it's Eric Simmons off to rescue his kid brother.
Hey, I like
He
low
expects
poly stuff.
rough
I think it's
weather and
cool.
steep slopes, but what he faces is far worse. Eric's first problem is
Okay,
the ghosts.
no, yeah, this
Over
isn't
the
on
years,
game.
many climbers lost their lives on that mountain.
Oh,
The
he was
ghosts
walking
now
into the
haunt
wall.
the path. Throughout the climb, their spirits attack Eric. They rush toward him and try to grab him. They do anything to make him fall, but the ghosts are only the beginning. The winds are freezing. If Eric doesn't reach shelter fast enough, the cold could end him. Higher up the mountain, the air becomes thin. Eric starts running out of oxygen and
Me
begins
of
to
Mount
hallucinate.
Faye.
To survive, you must help him find oxygen tanks buried in the snow. If you survive everything, you eventually reach the top. However, the ending is tragic. Eric finds his brother Frank, but it's too late to save him. Frank is frozen in the snow. Even with such a sad ending, many players enjoyed the game. But most had no idea
so
it was
sad.
inspired by a real-life tragedy from the 1970s. It involved a man named Reinhold and his younger brother Gunther. Reinhold was an expert mountain climber. In 1970, he decided to climb a mountain called Nanga Parbat. It was one of the most treacherous climbs on Earth. Many people were too scared to even attempt it.
As the 9th highest mountain
So
on
why are
Earth,
we doing
this means it is also one of the fabled 8,000 meter peaks, and also one of the only mountains on Earth that possesses a so-called death zone.
At the time, the mountain had a fatality rate of 77%. That meant 2 out of 3 climbers never made it back alive. Reinhold understood the danger, but he wasn't going alone. He asked his brother Gunther to join him. Gunther was also a climber, but he was far less experienced. Still, he agreed. The brothers began their climb
And then
on
Gunther
June
fucking
26,
dies.
1970. Against all odds,
Right.
they reached the summit the next day. But the real danger was on the way down. Gunther started showing signs of altitude sickness. The lack of
Ooh.
oxygen affected his brain. At one point, Gunther became delirious. The brothers kept
Ooh,
descending.
pushed
They
him
ran out
off.
of drinking water. They were exhausted.
tripped
Gunther
off the
kept
side.
getting worse. On the 3rd day, tragedy struck. An avalanche hit the slope. Gunther lost his footing. Reinhold watched his brother get swept away in an avalanche. He searched for hours but never found him. Eventually, Reinhold had no choice but to continue down alone. And he
Yeah.
made it, but he never gave up on his brother. For decades, Reinhold returned to the same mountain to search for Gunther. Every trip ended the same way, empty-handed. Until one day, Gunther's boot was finally found in 2005 by locals.
Is
That
his
was
foot
35 years
inside of
after
the boot?
the accident.
That's not
Reinhold
gross.
and Gunther's story is one of the most tragic in mountaineering. 2 brothers went up a mountain, only one returned. This next game was inspired by one of the internet's biggest mysteries. The Bridge Curse 2: The Extrication.
Oh, I
This
don't know
game is
this
set
one
in a
anyway.
university, but it has nothing to do with education. It's about students who believe their campus is haunted, and they have a good reason to think so. Since the 1960s, people there have vanished without explanation. Others lost their lives in strange ways.
Whoa.
Decades passed, but the rumors never stopped.
What the
And
hell?
that brings us to the game's main timeline in 2016. In the game, you explore the university through 4
Guy has a
characters.
mustache.
One is a reporter investigating a missing person case. The other 3 are students filming a movie for a class project. Within
Yeah,
minutes,
mustache.
one thing becomes clear. The university is truly haunted. You encounter evil spirits that can end you with a single touch. The worst part is that you can't fight back. There are no weapons. Your only options are running and hiding. When you're not hiding, you explore the campus and search for clues. Each clue reveals a part of the school's dark history. During your exploration, you find a VHS tape. The tape shows a girl acting strangely inside an elevator. It looks like normal game lore, but it's much more than that. That clip is almost identical to CCTV footage from the real world. In 2013, a real girl was recorded acting the same way in a real elevator, but her story didn't end well. The footage was based on the case of Elisa Lam. In 2013, Elisa was 21. She traveled to Los Angeles for a trip. Then she suddenly disappeared. She stopped replying to messages. Her parents couldn't reach her. Finally, they reported her missing. Before she vanished, Elisa was staying at a hotel in LA. Police searched her hotel room for clues, but it was a dead end. There was no sign of kidnapping or foul play, so they widened the search.
They searched all the hotel rooms that they legally could, as well as the surrounding area of the hotel and the roof. But they found nothing.
Police questioned staff and reviewed security footage. That footage showed Elisa inside the hotel on the day she went missing. She walked into an elevator, then her behavior suddenly changed. She moved around like she was hiding from someone, but no one else was there. Then
so
she began
weird.
making strange gestures. It looked like she was interacting with someone, but again, no one else was there. Finally, Elisa stepped out of the elevator and disappeared from view. No one saw her again. Out of leads, police
the lady in
turned
the
to
elevator
for help.
from
They
the
released
TikTok
the
or from
elevator footage.
So right now we're asking your help
to
see if anyone recognizes 21-year-old Elisa Lam. Her worried parents flew in from Vancouver, British Columbia.
The elevator video went viral. People on Reddit tried to explain Elisa's weird behavior. Some believed she was possessed. Others thought she was running from a stalker. But none of the theories explained where she went. The mystery was finally solved on February 19th, 2013, about 1 week after the elevator video was posted. Guests at the hotel complained that their tap water turned black. Maintenance staff checked the water tanks on the roof. They found the source of the problem. Elisa was inside one of those tanks.
Nearly 3 weeks after Elisa Lam went missing, a body has been found in a water tank on the roof of her hotel.
There were countless questions. How did she get onto the roof? Why was she acting that way in the elevator? Police had no answers. The report said the exact circumstances that led to this remain unclear. With no evidence, the case went cold. To this day, no one knows what truly happened to Elisa. But that elevator video inspired documentaries, movies, and video games. One of those games was The Bridge Curse 2. The creators of this next game went to extreme lengths to make it as realistic as possible. Chernobylite. In 2021, a game studio called The Farm 51 released its most ambitious project yet. They called it Chernobylite. In the game, you play as a scientist named Igor. Igor's fiancée went missing during a nuclear disaster. Now he has to find her. To do that, Igor must enter the site of the nuclear disaster. That area is called the Zone, and it's a toxic wasteland filled with danger. Your goal is to survive as you explore. You must avoid lethal radiation while fighting monsters and soldiers. The game also involves parallel dimensions, time travel, and secret government experiments, but it's obvious where the developers got their inspiration. The nuclear disaster and the zone are identical to a real city. That city is called Pripyat, and it was one of the deadliest locations on Earth. In the early 1980s, Pripyat was a vibrant city in the Soviet Union. It had schools, shops, and thousands of families. The city was perfect, except for one thing. Pripyat was right next to a nuclear plant called Chernobyl. Then in April 1986, everything went wrong. Scientists at the plant were running a routine safety test. A computer glitch occurred. The team tried to fix it, but the problem escalated
game
fast.
of this.
Temperatures soared, and extreme heat began to melt.
They have a Roblox game where you can play at a nuclear reactor
Reactor
plant.
4 exploded.
After the explosion, radiation shot into the air. It drifted straight toward Pripyat. At the time, 50,000 people lived in the city. They were all forced to evacuate overnight. Pripyat became a ghost town. The air was too dangerous to breathe. Officials sealed off the entire area. Experts estimate the city won't be habitable for up to 20,000 years. That whole region became known as the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone. About 30 years later, the game developers revisited the story. They wanted to build a game that takes place inside the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone, and they wanted it to feel as realistic as possible. So instead of downloading photos from the internet, they traveled to the zone themselves. Luckily, parts of the Exclusion Zone were open to tourists in 2011. Using 3D scanning technology, the team captured the entire area and built a digital version of it. They filmed everything they could: deserted buildings, collapsed homes, rusted cars. even piles of scrap metal. Then they recreated everything inside the game. Thanks to their work,
insane.
Chernobylite isn't just the game. It's one of the most accurate digital recreations of the exclusion zone ever made. The most disturbing thing about these games isn't the horror. It's knowing that everything you're experiencing was inspired by something that actually happened. My friends, the worst horrors don't come from our imagination. They come from our choices. So choose wisely. VisualVenture. Wait, so if you guys like this video,
I've never heard of that game. That's actually so cool. I mean, they're obviously very dangerous. You should only go if you have the proper equipment or technology, whatever they had. Maybe they didn't, and maybe they are all sick now. Yeah, then maybe they're all sick now. That's actually so cool, though. It's like the most accurate recreation they have. That's insane.